All right, well, welcome to the second webinar in the Education Market 101 series, and this webinar will focus on who really are your customers in the school market. I'm going to just say a few words about SIia because we actually have quite a few non-members on the call today, and we just want to make sure that you know a bit about SIia if you don't, and that is, of course, that we are an association, but our members are our companies, and they all work with the content industry or software industry, and there's 180 of them or more that actually focus on education, and those are the companies that we work with in our education division. We have a number of initiatives, and they are sort of carried out by various working groups and committees. If you are interested in either membership or in looking at some of these committees, let us know, and you can email the Derby Editorial, as you can see there. We also have a couple of events each year, the larger events. The first one is coming up in December. It's in New York, and it's all about the business of education. This whole conference theme is on raising revenue and profitability, and that's all of the sessions. There's a great way to meet other people there. If you're interested, just go to the SIia.net homepage and you'll see ways to get more information about this. Also in May, we always have our San Francisco meeting, and it's a little bit larger meeting with a little bit broader focus. Again, if you have any interest in particularly membership, contact Eric because he can give you all of the great information. And on social media, if you're not following us on Twitter or some of the other things, do go ahead and do that as soon as you'd like to. Just as a way of introduction, I'm Karen Billings, and on the call here, the Derby Editorial is also on the call. She's doing a lot of behind-the-scenes logistics and management, and will be watching the chat box and also just helping make sure that if you're having any technical difficulties, we can help get that squared away. The others aren't on the call today, but they're all part of our staff who work very hard in getting information and initiatives completed. And some of these initiatives are the market surveys that we do. We have closed our 2012 surveys, and we'll be getting those reports up very soon. We have also closed our Cody Awards, but we're looking for judges. If you have educators or administrator contacts in the school, some of your customers, then please let them know that they could judge in a given category, and there's an application online that they fill out. And we do really make sure that they are qualified to judge that category. We've just closed our Innovation Incubator applications as well. I think we had like 60-some that applied, and we're now looking for reviewers. So if you are a member and are interested in taking a good look at some of these new innovative products or services and companies, a lot of them I haven't even heard of before, let us know. Again, the Derby is managing that, so please email her if you are interested. And then, well, let's get started with our speakers today. Sharon Makowka is going to be moderating, and I'll turn it over to her in just a second. But she's been a very active member for some time, and she has been on our membership marketing programs committee. She is on our EdTech Business Forum steering committee, and is just very, very active. And she's going to actually share quite a bit of information about conferences and things that you might consider as we get into this webinar. So Sharon, I'm going to ask you to tell the group just a little bit more about what you do in your job, and then also to lead the introductions, self-introductions that our panelists will do.
Great.
Sharon?
Thanks, Karen, very much. As Karen said, my name is Sharon Makowka. I have been with Editorial Projects in Education, which is the parent company of Education Week, for close to 14 years now, and I have been very happy and very proud to be part of the SIia, different membership groups that I've been, I think it's maybe about 4 or 5 years. I started out in New York with Ed Week, went to California, went to Chicago, and now I'm in beautiful, right outside Asheville, North Carolina. And I take care of just anybody and everybody when it comes to them stepping into the pages of Education Week for the advertising side, both print and online. I'm really happy and pleased to be the moderator of this panel today, and I'm going to ask Adam if he would start off. Adam, would you take the microphone, or the phone, I guess I should say?
Sure. Thanks, Sharon. By the way, I have my Ed Week right in front of me here.
Ah, thanks.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Hall. Most recently, I was president of Skills Tutor Division of Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. I sold my business in 2010 to HMH and then spent just over 2 years integrating the Skills Tutor business. Most recently, I've consulted for various companies, including one called Nervanix, which is an assessment platform company out of Dublin and Sydney. And I'm also in the middle of a new edtech startup called Nervanix, which brings practical applications of brain science technologies to the education market. I've been on the SIia board for a few years now, and I'm very honored to be asked to contribute to the webinar. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Andrew?
Yeah, Andrew Howard from Wowzers. We create online math software for elementary and middle school. I've been in business for about 12 years with my mom and sister. We started another company called Brain Hurricane that we still own and operate that primarily services students in Title I schools providing after-school tutoring. And Wowzers is really a startup that is branched off of Brain Hurricane. In the last 3 years, we've created elementary and middle school math and are selling subscriptions online. So I'm probably going to give insight into early questions as opposed to late questions, as Wowzers has really been on the market for about a year now.
Great, thanks. Doug?
Hi, Sharon. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Doug Rosette. I have been with TextHelp Incorporated for the last 7 years. They're a software company that supports students with learning disabilities. Prior to that, I worked at Cambium Learning, and seems like a former life, I worked with the blind and visually impaired for about 15 years. So I've been in assistive technology in one form or the other for the last 23 years, both selling and supporting education and government implementations.
Great. Thank you very much, all of you. So we're going to get into some questions that all the panelists can jump in at any point in time and answer. And please feel free at any time to get into the chat box and send us some questions if you find some of these that we're going to be discussing that you want further information about, or just have some knowledge that we could all use. So let's start with, are the customers you have now, gentlemen, for any given product, the customers you thought you would have when you developed your products? Adam, would you like to start? Or?
Sure. So generally, I'd say the answer is yes. In the case of Skills Tutor, the end users are the students first, the teachers second, and I'd say the administrators third. Most of the purchase decisions are made by the principal at the building level and a district administrator at the district level. So depending on the use case, whether it be formative assessment, response intervention, special ed, test prep, etc., there are several different district administrators who can make the decision to purchase. So the key is to understand as soon as possible exactly who it is that you're talking to, and then whether their interests are aligned to your product. And if so, how to articulate your product to make it highly relevant to their needs. And if not, then how can they lead you to the right person at the district who is relevant to your product? So back to the question, I didn't realize early on that there would be a certain group of adjacent markets where Skills Tutor was highly relevant, such as adult education programs or community colleges or one-stop career centers, detention facilities, so adult and juvenile. So we went into it with the basic assumption that basic skills mastery, which is what Skills Tutor provides, was relevant to elementary, middle, and high schools, and we marketed and sold into that segment exclusively at first. But once we realized that we were highly relevant to other adjacent markets, then we pivoted accordingly, and then those adjacent markets ended up accounting for about 30% of our overall revenue. So I mean, that's my experience with sort of thinking you know who your customers are and then finding out that it could be a little wrong.
Great. Andrew?
I think that generally the answer is yes, with the caveat that over the last 3 years from the time we started developing and piloting things in classrooms till now, I think a lot of the people that are actually our customers now are ones that really didn't exist as much 3 years ago, that are implementing a real blended learning solution that we're able to provide a real nice answer to because of some of the continuously adaptive things that we do. So I think generally the people that we thought were going to use it are using it, but they're using it differently, and so from a marketing perspective, we're accessing them differently.
Did you find that with Brain Hurricane the same thing took place, or was it a totally different? With Brain Hurricane, our market is a little bit better defined, and a lot of it's driven by Title money, Title I money. So, right.
It's a little bit more. There's a map that already exists as opposed to what we're doing now, which isn't as mapped out both from a funding perspective and just generally where people are, finding solutions like ours.
Okay, Doug, what's your feeling on all this?
Generally the same as the other panelists. The biggest difference with our program is we tend to sell directly into a special ed marketplace. However, by the design of our program, because it integrates with all content areas, there was sort of a surprise that, the customer, meaning the school district, really perceives this as a tool that can be used across the board for a much broader audience than just 7 or 8% of the student body that might be on IEP. So in that sense, we do develop for special ed, but we really are perceived as a tool that can be used universally.
Okay, thank you. So Andrew, we're going to go first with this question to you. How do you segment your customers? And then please, Adam or Doug, once Andrew's done, if you feel, just jump on in with any thoughts you might have.
Yeah, well, I'll tell it from the perspective of really a startup that's had 1 year worth of an inside sales team of 5 people. That means for us, we don't have many people and our resources are limited. So the first way that we segment is by role, and we try to keep it pretty simple. You can actually check out our new website that just went live today at www.wowzers.com, where we're just trying to split between a teacher and administrator. The reason for that is that we have a product that a teacher with a few steps can start becoming a user, and even though that we don't classically define them as the one that makes the purchasing decision, we know how important they are in advising that, but we found early on that it was really expensive spending a lot of time with our sales reps working with teachers that were not qualified, and by qualified I mean that had already become a user. Convincing them to become a user is harder, but once they are a user and the program can do that, then they become a qualified teacher, and a qualified teacher is somebody that we certainly want to spend some time with. Whereas any administrator that's coming through the door, whether or not they're qualified, will want to spend more of our human capital there. So that's the first thing, just in terms of efficiency that we do. We have 5 general topics that people are interested in this. We have a solution for assessments and blended learning and RTI and so forth. So, knowing early on if we can get information on what they're interested in certainly helps the type of content that we're using with them. And then, life cycle storage, really being able to look at a subscriber differently than somebody who is a lead, and somebody who's different than a market qualified lead that's really kind of poking around and it's clear they're looking for a solution, compared to a sales qualified lead, somebody that's asked for a pricing form or has some other sort of behaviors associated with making them a better candidate for our salespeople. So I would say that just in the early stage for us, the value of segmenting has been to make sure to pay the appropriate amount of attention to those two different roles, and to make sure that we're spending the most time then on those lowest hanging fruits.
All right. Doug or Adam, thoughts on this? How do you segment your customers?
Oh, this is Adam. I mean, like most industries, I think not every customer is created equal. So I think there are a variety of ways that you can segment them, by revenue contribution, by amount of post-sale implementation and fulfillment required, which is an expense, by the level of relevancy that the product has to a particular market segment, definitely by the amount of funding in a given market segment, also by the likelihood of the sustained renewal of that customer year on year, and to what extent does the customer see you as a critical partner. I think it's good to know, and what we probably all strive to be is woven into the fabric of the daily instruction or daily administration of our customers. So I don't know, those are a handful of ways, I guess, that I would segment customers.
Great. Doug, any thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I look at our customers, we'll take a school board or a school district, for example, and one of the active strategies that our team does is we look at departmentally segmenting the customer and, what keeps that customer up at night. And this really helps us guide effective conversations around our product and strategy and being a more effective consultant to the school if we know what points of pain those varying departments internally are feeling.
Sharon, I'm going to jump in too. Kara has a great question of everyone here while we're on this specific one rather than waiting to the end. She'd like to know more from the panel about how they segment their customer service departments to support both decision makers and users.
That's a really good question because, and this is Adam, because with Skills Tutor, the person making the purchase decision usually was not the user. So teachers used our products as students, but they weren't the ones procuring the product. So once we implemented and had a year's worth of implementation and it was time to renew, there's often a disconnect between the teacher who's getting benefit from the product and the purchasing office. So it definitely takes hand-holding on both sides. You have to hand-hold your end users to make sure that they're getting value out of your product or service, but you also have to stay in touch with the folks who are going to cut the PO at the end of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than Adam.
Yeah, I as well. I agree 100% with Adam. It does come down to touching your customers throughout the course of the year, and not depending on one influence or influencer in the district. You really need to penetrate multiple levels within the organization.
And let me just add on that real quick, because to address the specific question of how to segment your service departments, I wouldn't necessarily segment them in the sense that I think the same person who's keeping in touch with on the implementation side and making sure things are running smoothly and that value is being realized on that end should be the same person who is also keeping in touch with the procurement office. I think it can be the same person servicing the account comprehensively.
Great. Okay. Doug, this one's for you. As a company that sells a special education software program that is used in a general ed environment, how do you get buy-in from multiple departments in a district?
That's a mouthful, isn't it? I guess the easiest way to put this is our company comes from a unique position in the assistive technology world where our solutions integrate directly into core curriculum areas and they really can benefit all students, from phonetic-based spell check to predictive text to text-to-speech. So we're not necessarily just, even though we usually go in through a special ed door, we really are trying to get all the stakeholders at the table. So this adds a degree of difficulty when selling a sort of a intervention type of solution across the board. So I think it really comes down to effectively understanding the pain points, again, as I mentioned earlier, of those varying stakeholders, be it IT or a curriculum director or a special ed director or a principal. All of these folks are coming at this decision from a different angle. So understanding that up front before you're going in, asking good questions will go a long way to shortening the sales cycle. As we all know, in education is very long.
Great. Thank you. Adam or Andrew, any thoughts?
I got a quick. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that while we're a product that is for elementary and middle school, we find a lot of overlap with underperforming students in high school, for example. So I can echo a lot of what Doug's saying with regard to buy-in. The upside there is that as you start to gain acceptance and people start to become advocates for your product, they can do it across their organization. So having that halo effect and being able to open up because of make the cross-department thing not a negative but a positive. I think has been a real insight into us, and that some of our customers are not the ones that we originally created the product for too.
Great, Adam.
Yeah, this is kind of a specific item, but it helped me when I was selling the special ed. In IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is part of the SBA, there's a provision in there that says if the product or service you're buying using special ed dollars can be used by the general ed population at no additional expense, then that is a encouraged use of those funds. So if I had a special ed product or a product that sold well into the special ed market, but I knew it could be used in general ed as well, I would go talking to the superintendent and the curriculum coordinator and other administrators who have decision-making authority and say, you can use IDEA dollars for this, it's okay, even though special ed kids aren't going to be the ones using it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's called the incidental use provision in IDEA.
Oh, okay.
So Sharon,
yes.
Lisa Blackwell has a great question, and folks are coming up with great questions today. But I think before we get on to a couple of other areas here, it might be the best time to address it. And she's wondering if you have any practical advice on how to channel either sales or customer service inquiries at the outset, and what kinds of people you assign to each category.
I think the dog wants to take that one. I can. This is Andrew from Wowzers. I can speak a little bit to that. We try to, and we have a small shop, so it's not a tough decision between the 3 or 4 people that the person could go to. But we try to have some consistency across that rationale. We don't, for example, have a territory. We're looking at the entire country as an addressable market. And so, for example, I've got a couple of sales development reps and then a sort of account manager. We know, for example, that a market qualified lead or a sales qualified lead, somebody that's come in and become a user already or started to poke around and ask for pricing, is going to be routed to an account manager, and there's a queue that we use Salesforce. There's a queue in Salesforce where those different leads at those different life cycle stages rest. So there's a workflow surrounding that. I'm sure it can be specific, and as the company gets bigger, more specific. But we're really looking to segment based on mostly their life cycle as opposed to anything else, as we don't have territories or otherwise we have a pretty flat organization.
This is Adam. One model that I used was a territory model where I'd have, let's say in the Southeast, I'd have a field salesperson, an inside salesperson, and they were a team. And then a professional development person and an implementation person, all 4 of them working in tandem with one another. So to answer the question, I think if you get a sales call, the sales call will be directed to the sales team. If you have an implementation call, it would be directed to the implementation team. And in terms of what to look for in each, there are just there are people that are great trainers and great hand holders, and then there are people that are great salespeople. And I think that there may be some mutual overlap in terms of characteristics or skills. I think they're pretty distinct for the most part. That's my experience.
So Sharon, Victor has a good question, but it's actually the questions that we're going to be asking and answering on the next webinar series or two over the next couple weeks. This webinar was designed just in terms of defining your customer, and then it's reaching your customer and setting up the sales channels, etc. So if we have time at the end and somebody wants to answer it, Victor, otherwise stay tuned for the next webinar. Robin has a good one, though, just in terms of knowing that your product person that you assigned or thought was going to have it and went to that person. She's wondering, what kind of assurance do you have that the teacher will actually use your product? Any tricks of the trade for knowing that the customer you designed it for is actually going to be using it?
Sure. Doug, I'll chime in first on this one. Robin, I would suggest making your product or service very digestible in the sense that, in our product we have built-in professional development in videos, which seem to be a very effective way of training not only the teachers but the end users as well. So PD is always change, and getting a product implemented in a classroom setting is always a challenge, especially as with a tool like ours, where it's not necessarily curriculum based, but we're in a tool that sits above what they're using as sort of a differentiated instruction tool. So I think having continual access to effective professional development, even if it's in the form of YouTube or TeacherTube, and allowing students to have access to that as well is critical.
Yeah, for us that's probably an 80% product question and 20% marketing question. The 80% product question just is around optimizing the product and the user experience. So as we get, when a new feature comes out on Facebook or Google, they don't send you to a help page. They give you little tool tips that walk you through things. So, that's where I think that's mostly for us a product question. The marketing question, the marketing portion of it rather, is I think about engagement with users and ensuring the suite of PD and access to it, as Doug was talking about, is important too.
Okay, so I think we need to go on to the next question, Sharon. Sharon, still there? Oh, in the meantime, the next question that we wanted the folks to address, and Adam I think was going to take it first, is what's the most challenging aspect of selling to the education market in terms of your customer focus?
Sure. Well, I'm one of the people in the industry to point out very quickly that selling into the education market, in my opinion, is not easy. The decision-making process can be, not always, but can be idiosyncratic, to put it kindly. What might seem to you as a no-brainer value proposition, whether it's financial savings to the district or compelling student gains or improved productivity of teachers and administrators, may not necessarily be viewed that way by the person or people to whom you're selling. Much of this business is still relationship-based. And I emphasize the word still, though, because I'd say in the 80s and 90s and even into the 2000s, a good amount of a salesperson's success depended upon how well ingrained he or she was into the good old boy or good old girl network. This is especially true of smaller supplemental product sales where discretionary funds apply. Nowadays, I think, there's definitely a tighter, more rigorous focus on research, efficacy, objectivity, But a solid network among key influential educators, I believe, is still highly valuable. Educators talk, highly collaborative market. So if you establish a solid network and reputation with influential educators, I think it goes a long, long way. Back to the challenges, though, I think it helps to keep in mind that educators are not necessarily capitalists. They may be, but they may understand the need to manage a P&L to some extent. But if you think about the revenues for a school district, they're not dependent necessarily upon selling anything. Rather, they're dependent upon appropriation. And anything that might be analogous to a profit gets sent back to the state or federal coffers often. So to approach an educator or an educator customer as you would a consumer or a traditional B2B sale, I don't think is the right approach, because you'll find yourself stumped at best and then insanely frustrated at worst. I think it helps to figure out the trigger points of the decision maker, do your best to articulate your product as a must-have given that trigger point context. Also, I suggest you become familiar with the term dump money. Those funds that schools need to spend by the end of the day or by the end of the week, or else they lose it. You want to be at the front of their Rolodex so that you're the first person they call when they need to spend those dollars. And that's, in my opinion, the importance of robust networking.
Great. Doug, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, in the world that I live in, I guess the two biggest challenges that I've seen firsthand with my team has been attrition within districts where there's lots of turnover at all levels. So I think having multiple stakeholders or multiple contacts in any district, as Adam was just saying, is so critical. The other piece is understanding your sales cycle. Educational sales, the cycle in educational sales tends to be pretty long, and if you miss that window for budgeting and you're not in the front of the Rolodex for dump money, you're waiting till next year. So know when to begin your pilots and basically understand the cycle, I think is essentially can be a challenging thing.
Great. Andrew, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd echo what both Adam and Doug say. It's a tough, because of its bureaucratic nature with a lot of stakeholders and a long selling cycle. And it is still a lot personality related, where people are building relationships. We've tried to we're interested in scaling that, and personal relationships are a tough thing to scale. So, we've started with a number of, in our first year, of bigger clients, and we've built the personal relationships there. In terms of trying to scale it, we've then gone back, we look at data sets about districts, criteria, about budgets, and so forth, and say, what is it about these districts where we've been successful building these relationships that makes them similar to others, and those should be the districts that we're investing the expensive time to build the human relationship based on criteria that we've found success in previously.
Great, thanks. My part of this was to just a little bit, and I know we want to make sure we have enough time for questions and so forth, but during the course of the year, there are tons of local and state and national trade shows, and you'll find on slides that LaDerby was able to download some trade shows. But very briefly, the trade shows season for technology starts in January with the FETC. We move over then to Austin, that's in Orlando, Florida. In February, we have TCEA, which is the Texas Computer Education Association trade show, and then we have South by Southwest EDU in March, and then we sort of jump into June when the largest trade show, the national trade show, ISTE, takes place. This year it's in Atlanta, Georgia, or next year, June of 14, it's the last week of June in Atlanta, Georgia. But I'm just wondering if anyone out there or my fellow panelists have any other suggestions for folks to where to go, where to be seen. And you don't necessarily always have to have a booth. I mean, most times people make more inroads when they just walk and stop and start talking to people or attend sessions. So I'm wondering what Doug or Adam or Andrew can contribute, what sort of experience you've had in the K-12 marketplace, or higher ed for that matter.
Yeah, I'll throw out a couple of shows that weren't on that list, and these are maybe more specific to special education. But again, ATIA in Orlando, which is usually at the end of January, is a terrific conference for all types of technology for individuals that are blind or have mobility or learning disabilities. Closing the Gap, which is actually going on right now in Minneapolis. And those are both, they cover both, I guess, K-20, I guess you could say. And then the two post-secondary shows that we really key on is the AHEAD National Conference and then Accessing Higher Ground, which the AHEAD National Conference happens, I believe it's in the summer, and Accessing Higher Ground is in Colorado in November. Great conferences, all four of them.
Great. Thank you. Adam, anything?
I think a lot of it, most of it, I think, depends on the demographic composition of the attendees and the number of attendees at the show. If teachers are the ones buying your products, then conferences like ISTE, FETC, TCEA, Q, and those are good ones. They attract a lot of teachers as well as administrators. But if your customers, the people buying your products, are superintendents, then you may want to seek out administrator conferences like AASA, Council of Great City Schools, specific state superintendent conferences. Also, a lot of companies find success in investing in smaller, more intimate conferences like ERDI and District Administrator, where you're paying a lot of money to have one-on-one time with influential superintendents and administrators. And the key is to come in with a really strategic, clear, well-defined agenda to make sure you're optimizing your time. Otherwise, it could be a huge waste of money. And then, of course, if the success of your product depends on policy or state-level influence, then conferences like CCSSO may be good as well. And finally, I'll just say I wouldn't discount conferences like SIia, COSN, EdNet. If educators are your customers, you're not going to find them there necessarily, but I can't tell you the number of times it's paid off big time to have a robust industry network. And the intellectual capital that you access and then build for yourself is invaluable. Also, there are tons of business development opportunities, strategic partnerships, joint ventures, et cetera, that result from active participation in those organizations.
All right.
I agree.
And I'm going to move us along, Sharon, to the next question, and we may be able to skip I think it's more important to answer the questions that...
Okay.
Sure.
Shall we go to Jeff Blackwood, or do you want me to go, what's unique about selling to your customers?
I was actually going to suggest to Jeff that is specifically also going to be addressed in the next webinar.
Great. Okay.
Being your and sort of, directly selling to your customers one place or the other. So we'll get there.
Okay. So panelists, what's unique about selling to your customer? Are the customers in the education market so different from each other? Adam, you want to start?
Sure. I think what's unique about education customers is they generally all place value on student achievement, although some execute on that better than others. And they all seem to place value on improving their craft as educators. I don't think there are many industries out there that put greater emphasis on professional development than in education. So if you can articulate your product as one that either or both moves the needle on student achievement and makes teachers better at what they do, then I think you'll find that your message is going to resonate. So if you have a product that improves productivity of teachers and administrators, you may want to avoid pitching it as a productivity tool, because that will be perceived as just another thing teachers have to learn or do per a mandate. But instead, if you position it as a tool that will help the teacher be a better teacher, I think you have a better chance of getting their attention. I mean, the market's highly nuanced in that regard, I think. Messaging is really key.
Yeah, as Xander, I agree with that. The more targeted our message is, the more effective it is, and it shows up very clearly in engagement rates. Some of our big customers that are big districts like New York City want something that's pretty different than a district that has a handful of schools. The big district's interested in data integration and a lot of things at a more administration level. The small school is interested in being able to have a lightweight and simple turnkey solution. So, I think that however you segment your customers, the answer is that they're all very different from one another, and figuring out how and what the value proposition to each, it really optimizes being able to convert all those different folks into customers.
Super. Andrew, anything?
That was Andrew.
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
was Andrew.
Yeah.
Doug, I guess, Adam and Andrew, I think, did a fantastic job in answering this. It really comes down to how we segment and, again, understanding the different stakeholders at the table and how we support their needs. That's probably the best way of meeting their needs. But I don't think there's anything that dramatic between the types of customers that we experience.
Great. Think ahead to 5 years from now. How do you think your customer base will change? What are you doing to transition to that? Doug, you want to take that one first?
This would be our last question.
Okay. As an assistive technology software company, how students access the supports are always changing. In thinking about this question a little bit, I realized the iPad wasn't around 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's actually out just over 3.5 years. That's really transformed special education and how students are accessing apps and everything else in that environment. So to try to forecast what the next 5 years will hold is almost impossible. However, I think the one thing that's constant is change. And, one way our company is preparing for this is we've transitioned to more cloud-based or streaming-based software applications, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't even need wireless for most of our tools. Now, our desktop offering, you need to be in the cloud for about half of it, and we're quickly transitioning to our more cloud-based delivery of our supports to anticipate the needs for Google Apps for Education and other types of market segments and environments that we want to support.
Great.
Yeah, I can trumpet that as well. The point, Doug, about the iPad not being around a few years ago is it's sort of eye-opening. We've only been around for 3 years, so from development till now. It's been very interesting, and I think that we used to break out our crystal ball more. We've transitioned to being an agile shop. We ship on a weekly basis improvements that we've made and have learned that we have little ability to predict beyond a few months where we think what our customers are going to be wanting. So I guess our solution for trying to stay relevant is to not spend a lot of time predicting out, and making sure that we provide really good service. And the thing that we're supposed to do well, delivering that hour a day of math for the elementary school and middle school student and teacher, is something that we just do very, very well and continue to be responsive to what people are using.
Right. Adam?
I would just say, and these may be kind of bold predictions, but I think digital will be highly, highly relevant. I think textbooks will be table legs or doorstops. Broadband will be ubiquitous, especially if we get E-rate funded to the next level. As a result, mobile devices will be ubiquitous in the classroom. Educators will expect easy access to highly relevant content, highly functional platforms. I think Common Core will be everywhere, but perhaps with different skins in different states, called something different, but basically the same thing. Expectations for content and assessment providers will be alignments that go deep and not just wide. I think the current fear of big data will subside. I think it'll make room for powerful analytics and interoperability among systems and data that will truly revolutionize the way we teach and the way we learn. And how we learn will continue to become as important, if not more important, than what we learn.
Super. Well, Karen, I thank everybody for all their time. especially my fellow panelists. And Karen, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you all, including Sharon, for contributing today. And particularly thank you to the folks that were online and some really great questions. I have to say that I've been running webinars here for a long time, and this is one of the first where we got great questions and great participation from the folks who were participating. So I really appreciate that. I did want to remind you that in 2 weeks, same time, same day, we'll have our third webinar on in the Ed Market 101 series, and this is we're extending from finding out who your customer is to how to effectively reach your customer. And the next one I think is going to be on the sales aspects of it. We've got a number of them that we'll try and get further information out soon. We will let you know how to register for that if you're interested. And again, thank you all, and thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.